Hey guys, what's going on? So something that I predicted is happening in real time, and I'd like to talk about it because if this actually actively does happen, I'm going to be so proud of myself for understanding how the meta works. A long time ago, I proposed that if everybody at the top, like the top 100 players of this game, if they decided to collectively, because they have enough crit that they will beat everybody and be still in the top 100 players of all time, right? All the people with like the 7K, 7,200 crit, right? They're going to beat you no matter what deck you have. And so essentially what they're doing is they're just playing against each other at the top level to get on the leaderboard for that top 100. Their only competition is each other. So if all of those people, if they all played Hex, right? Hex, if they just decided to not play Night Statue, they decided to not play, all of these things. And if they just decided to play Hex, and Hex became quote unquote the meta of the top 100 decks, they'd have no choice but to nerf Hex because they don't want Hex to be like the best card, right? Because then that would encourage everybody else to be like, oh, well, if I play Hex, then it'll be so good, right? And now that sounds like a ridiculous statement, right? It's currently happening in this game. They figured out that Stasis is the best usage of a support card if you have the highest damage thing anyway. Now, if you can't equate to the damage that's going up to like in the 8-minute, 9-minute area, if you don't have a good enough deck, right, to beat that amount of damage, then you're not going to win anyway, right? So like if you're running an archer deck with Night Statue and Scrapper and Trapper and Gunslinger, right? And you're getting to wave 9, right? You running Stasis isn't really going to help you. But if you have the best, highest DPS card, if you have a Reincarnation Phoenix that, like a Reincarnation 3 Phoenix, and you have the best DPS card, there's only so much damage that you can do. And what Stasis does is it makes all of your damage not matter. And essentially, when you get into that 7, 8, 9-minute mark, essentially what you're doing is you're just stalling out the field in order for you to win. You can like go into legendary rankings, find an 8-minute game and find somebody playing a Stasis and understand how it works. But essentially what it does is Trapper can only do so much. Replacing that with a Trapper can only do so much. And even though you're slowing, you're not efficiently slowing. And so what's happening is Stasis slows so much because of all the traps that it puts on the field that it slows better than a Trapper. Because Trapper's traps not only go away, but it doesn't stop the monsters, it just slows them down. So they're still progressing forward, even if it's at a slower rate. Whereas Stasis, with as many discs that are on the field, it'll just straight up stop monsters. And so it pushes you into the 9-minute range. And that's essentially what everybody at the top level are doing, to where Kobold doesn't matter because it's just more efficient to slow the field. So you would think that everybody at that top level would have switched to Kobold by now. That they would have like Reincarnation 3 Kobolds and they'd all be running Kobolds. And that's not what's happening at all. Everybody in the top 100 other than Banshee decks are running Stasis. And I had this open, but of course, whenever I go away from this screen, I always have to wait. If you go into the leaderboards, and you go into Death Waves, this is a Kobold deck with a Banshee, right? Relax. This is Stasis. Don't ask. This is Phoenix Stasis. This one is Phoenix Stasis. Thelonix is Phoenix Stasis. Novo. This is Phoenix Stasis. 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 Phoenix Trapper. Phoenix Stasis. Phoenix Stasis. Phoenix Stasis. Phoenix Stasis. And that's the meta. They literally just introduced a new support card that theoretically all of these people should have maxed out to a Reincarnation 3, and nobody cares because it's not enough damage. It's because the damage that you would have to obtain from putting a Kobold into your deck would have to mean that you'd have to take out an enchant sword, and you'd have to and I guess the amount of damage that a Kobold is doing doesn't equate to being better than an enchant sword, because all of these people should probably have a max Kobold, and they're not doing it. And Phoenix Stasis is enchant sword is somehow just still better. And so what they decided to do was they decided to make Kobold better. So before this came out, they nerfed Kobold from what it was, the numbers that it was showing in testing. And so they nerfed those numbers when it dropped. And now that nobody uses it and nobody cares at that high level, that no like main person is using it, they decided to then buff Kobold. They needed to buff the best support card because nobody cares. And I think that's really telling. In the same thing that what this person said. I'm wondering which players you're listening to and which ones you continuously ignore. The fact that they needed to buff the best support card, because it is the best support card, but the fact that they needed to buff the best support card because the players at the top 100 level are not using it and don't care, I think that's very telling of this game. And I think they're going to nerf Stasis. That's my prediction. I think that they are going to nerf Stasis at some point. And I think that whenever they nerf Stasis, it's going to be really funny. And a lot of people that don't understand this meta are not going to even understand why a card that they don't even use is being nerfed.